I have spoken. I have spoken.
Quill.
I have spoken.
I just wanted to bring it back to a simpler time in Star Wars television.
I know,
Where there was
Quill.
less divide. We could
Every-
all just look at that
everyone
beautiful,
rallied.
beautiful, ugly Ugnaught.
All the fans
Just-
rallied behind Quill.
We had Nick Nolte in Star Wars.
And
that was
Suka. Suka.
Suka.
Suka.
I can bring you
Suka.
warm. I can bring you in cold. I just like the simplicity of just what
simpler
a
days.
time. What a
Simpler
time.
times. Welcome back to the Star Wars Guys podcast. We are excited to get into things. There's a lot of news for Star Wars, so we're about to dive into it.
There's a lot.
But as always, we are your hosts, Mike,
Hello there.
myself, Nate. Hello there. And Uncle is not here. He couldn't make it. Couldn't make it today.
Yeah.
But we are
We're gonna hold down the
excited
fort
to.
though.
Yeah, we're holding it down, holding it up.
Using the Force. We are Sabine holding up Ezra as he just jumps across the little ravine, and the witches
First
are.
time ever using the Force.
That's us.
That's us.
First time Force users.
Yep. But we're excited to get into things.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk
I know.
about.
I think do you have a list of things? I
Do
think
I-
you sent us a
Do I have a list?
A list?
I have a list.
You have a list?
No, I have a list.
No, a
yeah.
list of
yeah,
different
so-
different things.
The idea for this podcast. So last week there was some big breaking news in the Star Wars fan community that we didn't get to discuss at all because
We didn't.
I
Get
had
to
a work
discuss it.
conflict last
Yeah.
week, so we weren't able to podcast. But yeah, overall, we didn't get to discuss at all the end of the Acolyte as
Yeah.
far as the Acolyte not moving forward, the Acolyte cancellation, the Acolyte not renewal, whatever you want to call it.
Whatever
we'll
you
get
wanna
into all
call
that.
it.
We'll get into all that. But there is whatever any way you slice it, the Acolyte's done
Yeah.
as far as on TV. I mean, we will discuss maybe the future of some of the characters, but some things we want to discuss on today's episode and some kind of big overall things are just a little rundown, talking about obviously what factors might have come into play when
Yep,
making that
yep.
decision, why they canceled it, what this possibly means for the future of those Acolyte characters, but also the
Also
future
just
of Star Wars television.
Yeah.
We have
in
a big
general.
overall. We want to kind of step back and really look at it and just say how we view how we think things are going, where we think things are going to go, and does this decision affect that one way or another?
Yeah.
And then also just Star Wars TV in general, streaming in general, the effects of streaming, how it's affected maybe Star Wars television and maybe some other things as well. And then there's a lot that's currently going on in the Star Wars, discussion, fandom, all of that, about just kind of which direction Star Wars should go next. So we have a lot to get to there. But let's start with the cancellation of the Acolyte.
Outlaws too. Star Wars Outlaws.
Star Wars Outlaws. We'll be able to discuss some Outlaws stuff. The Acolyte was canceled last week, and real quick, we almost have to spend a ton of time on it. So there's some semantics discussion and whether or not to say that the show was canceled,
Not
whether or not
continued.
to say not renewed. I understand some people maybe reading it initially as canceled and going like, "Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think that a second season had been announced." True. I understand that point of view. I also understand that the show was clearly written with the intent of having a second season. Leslie Headland, the showrunner, has openly
Mentioned.
talked about, I am actually saving this character for season 2. In season 2, this will be explored. So she was planning on a second season, which also, from our standpoint, that's why I'm also fine with it being called canceled. So I don't
Yeah.
really have. Do you have any thoughts either way there?
I'm
Obviously, to
upset.
us,
I'm
I-
upset. It's disappointing
I'm
that
not
it's
saying
canceled.
I don't have problems
but
with it being canceled. I'm saying
Yeah.
with the labeling of calling it
Yeah, I'm
canceled. Do you have a
upset that
strong
it's-
feeling either way?
I don't. I mean, I'd call it whatever you want. The reality is it's not moving forward, unfortunately. I mean, I wish it was. I enjoyed the
same.
show. Was it perfect? No. I had my gripes here and there, but that's how every project is. So
Me too. Yep.
it's too bad because I enjoyed it. I thought there was a lot there. Even if there were some bumps along the way, I think it felt new and fresh, and by that I mean the mystery element of the show from week to week unfolding, trying to decipher and figure out what really was going on, and just like the mystery behind it was different than some of the storytelling we've gotten in any other Star Wars stuff.
Some of the point of view,
The point of view
storytelling,
thing.
where
so
we
there
aren't
were,
revealed
yeah.
exactly what happened until later.
So there were
on.
elements of it
It's
like
cool.
that I really enjoyed, and made the week to week viewing experience a lot of fun, because you were trying.
We actually
to
got together and would watch
Yeah,
it
we
week to
would.
week, and it was fun to speculate.
to speculate and decipher and try and figure out what was going on, where things were going. So disappointed it's canceled, but I mean, yeah, I don't have an issue with people saying it's canceled, especially with the good sources like you had mentioned coming out and saying like, no, it actually was canceled,
Because they were playing.
They already had reached out to possibly directors to do certain episodes. They were writing
They were planning on
story
moving forward with season 2 before the decision was made to.
So, which I think is
to
different
cancel.
than like Kenobi, which was clearly only envisioned for one season.
Yeah.
And if they ended up making a season 2, then they end up making a season 2. But Kenobi was written for one season.
It felt like a completed story, and then essentially was, are there other adventures that those characters could go on? Obviously, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, finding out what they then talk about in their training. That's something that could be shown in a novel. But we even said, like, if they were to write a season 2 of Kenobi, we're like, where would it go? Like, we even said that as far
where
as, like,
would it go?
how would they, because it would feel like you're trying to, you'd stretch that.
It would just force another, it would just be another story.
Yeah.
This
ends with, and this ends with Vernestra Rowe going in to see Master Yoda. Yeah. We don't know what she was going to say to him. Obviously, Plagueis being introduced in the final episode. Osha turning to the dark side, becoming the Acolyte alongside Manny Jacinto's character. Like, there was just a number of things that clearly, and again, we don't even have to speculate based on what's in the show, because what we know outside of the show is that they've explicitly said that they were planning on season 2.
Yeah. So I think that,
so that makes sense. And as far as my overall thoughts, as far as its cancellation and feelings about it, I'm bummed. We've talked about it on. I mean, I'm bummed, but I also understand it. This is what I'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm bummed because
Anakin Skywalker's in the chat. Good morning, Jedi
Anakin.
Arts. Good morning. Good morning.
Anakin
Welcome.
Skywalker. Hello, Anaheim.
Hello, Anakin.
That's my older Hayden Christensen.
Hayden Christensen.
I've been happy to be back in Star Wars, and also, what we were saying about the Acolyte. I do understand it. We'll get to some of those factors that we think really made it. That played a role in making that decision. But bummed because there was a lot I enjoyed about the show. Like you, and like you've already said, was it perfect? No. Were there things that I felt like I even had some kind of obvious struggles with certain parts of it? Sure. I also liked the freshness of it. Like we said, I liked the it wasn't a straight whodunit, like it's a murder mystery kind of the way that it was maybe presented at first that we thought it would be. But it was it
wasn't quite Knives Out.
Questions, but there were questions that we were like, what really happened here?
That's what it was.
So it was interesting. We haven't seen a ton of Star Wars stuff that within one story. Like we got
J-Man. We got Joe in here also. Top
there
of the morning
he is.
to you, laddies.
We have seen in other Star Wars projects, we have seen obviously future storytelling and then having prequels that fill in the gaps. We've never had within the same project a ton of, hey, this is what's going on, and now what do you think happened? Well, let's take you back and fill in some pieces.
Yeah.
Then let's go back to the present time, and then let's really go back to that moment and now show you a different perspective of it. So I thought it was really cool. But yeah, getting into the actual reasons.
Why it was canceled.
Yeah. There was a big negative push and negative campaigning against the show from the moment it started.
There
so
was.
That plays a factor. I also do think, unfortunately,
fans are crazy.
I also think, unfortunately, if the show's ratings had been much higher, that Star Wars wouldn't have cared, that Lucasfilm wouldn't have cared as much about the negative stuff. Because Andor didn't have great ratings. Andor's viewing, meaning viewership. Its numbers weren't high. it was actually once one of the lowest watched Star Wars properties because at the time, even when it came out,
At the time, it was like, who's this? Like,
yeah, people were
okay,
like, oh, this
Andor,
is a show based off of kind of a side character from Rogue
Whereas
One
obviously Obi-Wan
that we already
Kenobi,
that
it was
we
the
know
biggest show.
already, but that we know already dies. Like
Yeah.
it was a prequel to a side character who we know doesn't survive.
Yeah.
But then the show came out and it was fantastic, and so of course they're like, well, yeah, it was critically acclaimed. The people who watched it really love it.
Yeah.
Pretty much universally praised across the board. Aside from a couple people having problems with bricks and screws.
We got
and
Derpy in the chat.
And
Andor was a good story. Yeah.
Yeah, Andor was great.
Andor was great.
So what I'm
Very
saying
well
is,
done.
it's not even to compare the two because it's not like I think this.
They're
versus
completely
this.
different.
But the actual facts and business of it is that there was a ton of negative talk about this, and there wasn't great viewership. If there was negative talk and the viewership was
Phenomenal,
Mandalorian
they'd be
season
like,
1
oh, well.
viewership, they would have renewed it, I believe. Because
Yeah.
I think they would have been like,
They'd
well,
have
it's
given it
negative.
another season.
We'll give it another shot because we have enough people watching it. When you get to, we don't have a lot of people watching it. Also, we've discussed in the last couple episodes when Uncle was here that the viewership significantly dropped off. That's a different thing. I don't think Andor dropped off a lot, to my knowledge. I think it just didn't start at a very high level as far as viewership, and people kept
I think
watching
Acolyte
it.
probably started high, but
Acolyte started high, and then I think it
dropped.
according to the ratings. I mean, I know at the end, its last handful of weeks, it wasn't even a top 10 viewed show at the time, which for a Star Wars show is like pretty unheard of. Like I know it was the lowest rated finale as far as the amount of viewers.
Yeah.
So there's all those things that unfortunately, as much as we like a lot of it, and as much as a lot of you out there, some of you really love the show, some of you don't like the show at all, some of you are in the middle. Unfortunately, regardless of how we all feel about the business side of it, is not enough people watch the show.
It also makes me think too,
to
because
keep it going, to solidly be able to say we will not lose money by doing this,
Yeah.
because it also was the most or second most expensive Star Wars show they've ever done. So that makes it even
I don't
harder.
know where that
when you have
budget went,
$180 million dollars
Yeah,
going
that's
into
crazy.
a show, and the viewership is as low as it goes, and you also get the negative talk from people.
That's crazy.
Now it's stacked up against you, where they would be really risking it to just say, "No, we're going to do it again." Like, it's one thing if you're renewing an animated show, because I did see some people saying like, "Well, Clone Wars season 1 was not great," and it was given a chance and it came all the way through season 7. Two major, I agree.
Yeah.
That's a comparison. I agree. And there's some of this that, like, I do wish that shows would be given a longer runway to get going. Unfortunately, we're in a different time in television right now. You don't get 7 seasons of a live action show to prove yourself, or even 3 to prove yourself. And in the streaming era, which we'll talk about, a lot of times you don't even get 2. The first season is enough. They kind of move on. And
I mean, Marvel's doing the same thing. Marvel's
I know.
doing
and
all these
we'll discuss all
one-season
of that
shows.
stuff too when we get
So
to the overall
television in
part.
general, the longer storytelling. Like, I don't know if we'll ever get another Mando.
No, and we'll get to all that stuff. We'll stay on Acolyte for just a second, and then we're gonna get to all of that moving forward of what we think. But agree, disagree with any of those points about the business of it? That unfortunately, do I think that the negative stuff played a factor? Sure, because I think if the word of mouth was better and the discussion was better regarding it, and it wasn't seen as so divisive, that a studio might feel more confident about rolling the dice on a show that has lower viewership.
Definitely.
But if you get both of those, so if one of those or if you get one of the two of those acting, then you can roll the dice and work. So meaning if you have low viewership but high positive fan response, you can roll the dice and go.
Look, you can't have.
If we get negative and negative,
here's the thing:
negative viewership, negative.
You can't have
views,
negative.
doesn't work.
You can't have negative talk, negative. Low viewership, and the largest budget or
That's
the
the thing.
second largest budget.
Because
you can't have
the
all
risk
three of
is
those.
just through the roof.
Can't have
it. Do it.
And yeah, I wish some of was there intentional, hate and bombing and people rooting for the cancellation of the show. Yeah, that's just ridiculous. That is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Why
they had negative reviews before the finale even came out? People were reviewing
how can
it.
you?
I don't even know
I don't
you're
get
allowed
how
to.
you can be a fan or say that you're a fan of something and actively root for it to fail. Like, even if you don't like the show, I don't know. Chat, you guys can comment on this all you want. even if you don't like the show, there are other people that do. So I'm not gonna sit there and like actively root for it to fail. I'll just be like, okay, that wasn't for me. I'll stop watching it. I'll wait for the next Star Wars project to come out. I'll wait for Andor season 2. Great. I'm not sitting there rooting and throwing cancellation parties because a show got canceled.
There are people
it's just
posting
crazy.
literally the Endor celebration at the news of it getting canceled, and so this opens up into a
that's
bigger
just crazy
discussion.
to me. It's like you don't have to watch another season if it comes out.
This leads us into the bigger discussion about Star Wars TV, because I do think there is a problem fandom wise that I think fans think that behaving a certain way will just filter out shows that you don't like or shows that are not catered towards you, and will deliver just the shows that you like. And that's not the way necessarily that it works. And what's interesting is I actually screenshot this headline because this was an article. So this isn't even just like my thoughts on it. This was a national news article. This was Rolling Stone, huge publication. And here's their article. Can the best of Star Wars survive the worst of its fans? Some interesting points made in this article. Quote, these fans say they're fighting for Star Wars' future. But if their endless fantasy world can't accept any stories that they don't currently recognize, some of the self-professed biggest fans in all of the worlds could be closing themselves off to any future at all. The Star Wars fans clamoring for a return of the originals aren't just talking nonsense. They are ruining their chances to see the franchise they love grow in any meaningful way. And I would add to this, not just grow, but even to continue. So I do think Star Wars is in a tricky spot from a production standpoint. They've had some hits and some misses for sure, just like Marvel has recently. But Star Wars fans acting as if, as long as we just root against anything that they were like, this was not exactly what I wanted,
make what we want.
They're going to stop making. They're not going to make what you
want.
want.
They're not going to make what you want. They're going to stop making.
They're going to stop making.
And that's,
because they
and let's
do
get
not,
into it.
They're not
let's
in
get
the
into
business
it
of losing money or of just throwing. Because the business is changing. Star Wars is not in the business of, okay, here's our next. Neither is Marvel anymore. Here's our next 5 Star Wars shows we have coming out. In fact, if you notice, there's been no announcement of any Star Wars shows post the ones that we've already been and that have already been continued, which are we've
Andor,
got
Ahsoka,
and we got Skeleton Crew that's coming, and then all it is continuation of Andor, continuation of Ahsoka, and that's just one more season apiece.
Even Mando didn't get another season. They're turning it into a movie.
Yeah, I really think that there's a chance that after Ahsoka season 2, which I believe is happening after Andor season 2.
Mm-hmm.
That is possibly the last live-action Star Wars television we'll get for a while, based on some comments that Bob Iger made recently at investor meetings, where he said, we have done too much on TV, and we are definitely pivoting back to we have to make Star Wars focus on the big screen. Now, they completely went away from Star Wars on the big screen, so I am glad that they're refocusing on that.
Yeah.
But I do think they are the streaming wars that are going on between Netflix and Disney and HBO and all of the and Peacock and Prime and Hulu, although Hulu's with Disney now. There are big casualties of this streaming war, and one of the things is shows do not get a long runway to prove themselves. Also, the style of writing of shows is different, and I will say, and
shorter.
This is not me just defending Disney now or defending all these shows, because I don't love the style of writing of some of these Disney Plus shows. I don't love the style of writing of even some of these Star Wars shows, where it feels like a movie idea that they decide to stretch into a TV show instead of writing a TV show. And so I think that's where you get episodes of
that's why you
Ahsoka, episodes of Book of Boba Fett, episodes of Mando, and definitely maybe the most obvious of this is episodes of Obi-Wan, because Obi-Wan might be my favorite of the shows as far as its highest highs. I love the Obi-Wan show.
Highest highs.
But also it had some moments that felt very thin and very hollow, because it felt like this feels like a whole storyline that if it was a movie wouldn't even be in this.
No,
because they stretched it into a show. And now it feels like we spend 1 or 2 episodes
the whole
meandering
droid
along.
chase was not being a movie.
No, we where we spend a couple episodes kind of meandering along, where it feels like, man, it didn't feel like there's a ton of character growth in this episode. There wasn't a ton of the plot moving forward. Which, if you have a season of Lost, if anyone who's a fan of Lost, one of my favorite shows of all time, if you go back to old school primetime television, where they come out with 22 episodes, 23 episodes, and you have a couple episodes where you feel like, oh, that was a little bit more of a quote unquote filler, or quote unquote a little bit more stagnant. That's okay. When you have a 6-episode Disney Plus show, and you have 1 or 2 episodes you feel like don't move the plot forward, you're now like, the project is in jeopardy of failing as a whole, because you're going to lose people.
Exactly.
And
you now have 4 episodes that were, valid in terms of continuing the story, each of which are 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That's 2 hours. It's a movie.
I mean, so I contend that there's a number of reasons Andor has worked really well, and I love Andor, and I think as time has gone on, I've even loved Andor even more. One of the reasons is they got 12 episodes.
12 episodes, and it also just...
And they also were greenlit for a season 2 right off the bat. So it gave them, as storytellers, we've got 24 episodes to tell a complete story. They got longer episodes.
It just seems
when
like the vision for Andor...
It apart,
it feels like the vision for Andor was so clear. Because they had the budget they had. I mean, which it wasn't cheap either. They had the budget they had.
I think Andor might be the most expensive overall because of actually the number of episodes.
Yeah.
I think Acolyte is technically the most expensive per episode.
But Andor felt, in my opinion, even though Acolyte, I enjoyed a lot of Acolyte, Andor felt bigger scale.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's practical on the side of, like, you can see when they're on the side of mountains and stuff that were actually
very cinematic.
On set, very cinematic, not just volume. And I think Acolyte, I don't even know if Acolyte used volume or used a lot of volume.
They said they didn't, I think, or not much.
So I don't know. But anyway,
Acolyte's production was a little confusing to me as far as it
didn't feel as big.
A lot of it.
It didn't feel as big, like as grand. I guess the scale, the scope of the show.
Mm-hmm. But yeah,
but
I do think I think the main reasons for Acolyte getting canceled were business. I do think the other stuff plays a part in it. But I think they couldn't overcome the business problems of when your viewership not only is low but trends significantly down. You can't overcome that. And then if you add on top of that there was all this negative stuff, they're like, listen, it's better for us to move on.
Budget,
it's unfortunate, the budget, all of that.
So let's get into it. Where does this lead to the future of Star Wars television? Because it, like you're saying, it makes me wonder the longevity of Star Wars on TV.
Yeah.
It makes me question the longevity. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if we'll get, like I said earlier, another Mando.
I don't see another long running.
I don't see another show being more than 2 seasons.
No, I see animated.
Maybe.
I think
maybe
animated
3 if they hit a show that just like boom was really successful.
I think animated. I think what's so weird is I think right now it's hard for me to even picture. And again, I don't want to be negative. It's hard for me to picture sometime in the next 5 years them. Maybe the next 5 years. I definitely don't see sometime in the next 3 years them introducing a show, because I do think Mando is coming to an end. That's
Mando's ending.
My prediction is not necessarily that those characters might show up in more stuff. I don't think if Mando season 4 might come, but I think it might be a little bit down the road if they do. But Pedro Pascal, I think, is doing the film and in like a limited capacity. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the last time we see him as Mando for a while. Maybe he connects to the Filoni movie that's coming. Like, there could be some of that. That's maybe a couple years away.
We don't even know what that movie is.
But that, to me, the Filoni movie feels like the Ahsoka movie. Like, it feels like, to me, like we have the Mando movie, which I don't think is going to have Ahsoka in it, because I don't think she's connected to that. Because she's in a different galaxy. She's doing the Thrawn stuff, all that.
Unless that is the
not.
climax of the Mando movie, but it feels like that might be the Filoni movie.
It feels like that's the Filoni movie.
The Filoni movie is Thrawn versus...
Yes.
Everybody else.
So and they've actually even called it. They've even called it that. It's the Imperial Remnant. Like that when they brought him out on stage, they were saying that he was making a film talking about the Imperial Remnants and all that stuff. That feels like that's the Thrawn stuff.
And Mando will just lead up to that.
And Mando, I think, is
Mando,
gonna be,
Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, maybe even.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Fett.
So I'm really hoping for Skeleton Crew to do well. I really would love that.
Look, the trailers got me more excited than I even.
Oh yeah, I'm super excited about it. I just
feels
don't.
Goonies. It feels Stranger Things.
And maybe Skeleton Crew does so well that it gets a season 2. That would be awesome. The way that these shows and streaming is changing everything, it is. I saw an interview with someone recently where they were talking about the struggles of streaming shows. It was on I was listening to another Star Wars podcast, Force Center, which I've referenced them a lot. Joseph Scrimshaw. Joseph was talking about how a buddy of his used to work. A buddy of his, he didn't say his name or anything or who he worked for, but he worked and was very involved with one of the streaming services. He worked for one of those companies, and that this guy told Joseph flat out that you have to understand the nature of the business is streaming platforms, these streaming companies do not like greenlighting a season 2.
No.
And that if they have any excuse to not do it, they essentially will. They essentially will not greenlight it, because if a first season does really well, there's 2 things that usually happen. One, that's good for the company. The season does well.
Yeah.
For them, a win-win is a season does great, and then they're able to come with a new original idea that also does great on a different show, and then a different show. And starting these new shows, streaming platforms and streaming companies try to do this, because what happens with the season 2 is the show either does really well and sometimes wins a lot of awards like Emmys and stuff.
Yeah.
And then the next season, each of the actors all get a raise because they all become more popular and more famous. So now it becomes more expensive. Also, the show in general.
There's also just an expectation for budget increases when
the show in general gets bigger. If you look at like a Game of Thrones, the difference from season 1 to season 2, it goes up. The difference in House of the Dragon season 1, it goes up. Even Mando season 2 went from a small contained story in season 1 to season 2. Now we have Bo-Katan. Now we have this. Now we have more of Moff Gideon and the Imperial Remnant and Luke Skywalker. Like there's a lot of stuff that ends up happening, and so because of that, a lot of these shows. I mean, it's weird to think the time that we're in now. I mean, you would know this probably better than I am. Is there any announced Marvel TV show up on deck right now for Marvel? If there is
shows,
there's
a Vision show.
A Vision show, I heard that's in production.
But I mean, a lot of the shows,
or like is there an announced date? Like, is there a Marvel TV show coming out this year? If so, I don't know what it is.
I don't know
maybe
the dates, but maybe Daredevil Born Again.
Is that coming out already this year?
I
or is that
don't remember
next year?
if it's coming out this year or not. I can't remember the date on release, but
I
don't keep up as much with Marvel, so I don't remember all the dates.
But this is just a show. If you had asked us 2 years ago, we would have said, well, actually, because I know Moon Knight lines up with this.
I knew everything.
Up with on top of, and it was also it was back to back to back to back. You had Miss Marvel debuting the same time as Obi-Wan, which is overlapping with this, which is they had show on show. And I'm not saying necessarily that that's the right or the wrong way to go, but obviously what the company has taken from it is that they believe that that's not the right way to go.
It was too much.
That it was too much.
Well, I know it's too much because here's the thing. With Star Wars, I would say I'm a deep fan. Regardless of what comes out with Star Wars, I am watching it. I was that way with Marvel. Not as involved.
They just had too much.
Not as involved with Star Wars.
Yeah, but you weren't going to miss a project. You were watching every film.
Through Miss Marvel, I think I watched every single thing.
Yeah.
Moon Knight, I watched Loki, I watched. So through Miss Marvel, I watched every show that those like when they started doing the television shows.
Yeah.
I think I watched the first 5 or 6 shows all the way through until it started feeling like okay,
This is a lot.
This is too much.
Yeah.
It may have even been She-Hulk. I don't remember. Somewhere I watched She-Hulk too, but somewhere around there I was like, I can't even keep up with.
And it was hard because
Everything
what
was a
happens
lot.
with that is that the connections became diminished as far as the importance of each thing. It used to be
The
you
importance
would
of each
feel
character
like that
too.
would tie
Then it
into
was
the
like
movie, would tie into this. What Marvel
Well,
had
that's
for
a
so many
whole nother
years,
thing,
too. That's
'cause
a whole different thing.
Marvel.
Um,
They don't tie into like half. Their
Yeah,
stuff
it used
now
to
is not even
to be
connected.
just a guarantee.
But
Where now something comes out, and unfortunately, it's been a few years now, and they finally just came out and said, like, yeah, we're not continuing the Eternals. Like, we're not going to do it. Even
Yeah.
though it ends like
I mean, there's
huge-
been
so,
20.
like, there's been
I
so
think-
many things.
I think at one time there were 20 different Marvel movies with post-credit scenes. 20 straight
Yeah, it's
Marvel
crazy.
movies that,
Immediately led to the
or
next
maybe
thing.
it was projects. Maybe that was including the shows. 20 straight
in between, yeah.
projects that ended with like post-credit things leading to another thing that have not yet been addressed.
I saw something
That
like,
is that's crazy.
I saw something too that was like
Like Moon Knight.
yeah, and
and,
this
like-
obviously isn't
like
the Marvel
everything.
cast, or we're not hating on Marvel either because we love
No,
the
and I
Marvel
think
stuff.
they'll get around to a lot
but I
of
did
that.
see
It's just-
I did see because I didn't even see Eternals yet. I know that was years ago, but I know
You're
the big
part of the
the
problem.
big but the big reveal
I'm
at
just
the
kidding.
end. As far as like
Galactus?
this is a
like-
universe. Yeah, Galactus. This is a universe altering reveal. Like this changes.
There's a
like,
giant
everything.
hand coming out of the
And that-
earth.
And there's been 20 projects since then, and no
There's
one has
no-
addressed that.
No,
So
like
that's the thing, is
in-world character.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like,
Yeah.
wait, this is something that like
There's
literally
a
would
giant
change the way
hand.
everything happens, and no one's addressed it because it's almost like they revealed something that's too big that now, like, if we address this, like,
We have to
either
go
our
all
whole
in.
our sole focus has to be on this now,
Or
if that
we
was to
ignore
happen,
it, or
or
we
we have to
ignore-
pretend it didn't happen. Like, we just can't talk about it because it's so
It's so big.
it's so big.
I think they are heading
It's
that way.
unfortunately the same way, similar to the end of
Well, plus
Secret.
with the
It's
whole
the end of
Kang-
Secret
the whole
Invasion. It's
Kang.
the end of Secret Invasion, basically.
Oh, that's what it was. Secret Invasion. That's where I stopped.
It's the end of Secret Invasion where if
That's where
and
I stopped.
and
I watched.
love
I
Amelia,
watched 3
I love
episodes
Amelia
of
Clark. Amelia
Secret
Clark
Invasion.
is one of my wife's favorite actresses too.
She's great.
Awesome. She's so funny and hilarious. When her character becomes essentially like
The greatest hero of all time.
the greatest hero of all time and has a Hulk arm and everyone's superpower, that has to be addressed moving forward, or else why is she not the answer to just solve
Everything.
everything? You are in like
She is a combination of everybody's power.
so we when you paint yourselves into a corner, then
That's
it's
when
like
I stopped. I actually remembered, and again, not to hate on Marvel. I love Marvel, and Deadpool Wolverine was
I loved it.
unbelievable.
I'm still
Unbelievable.
talking about it. It's-
Unbelievable.
You and I have seen it multiple times.
I wake up every morning
was
and
great.
do that dance.
Every morning.
Not
That's so
really,
good.
but it's so good.
It's so good.
Like that's what I'm saying. I love it. Deadpool
Yeah.
Wolverine's fantastic. But when I think I watched 3 episodes maybe of Secret Invasion, and then I heard about because I fell behind and I missed a
because
few.
I didn't even
and
see all of
and then I
Secret
didn't see the
Invasion,
finale,
but
but
I
I
saw
heard
the
about that,
end
and I saw that clip
scenes,
going
too.
around. And that's when I was like, I'm not watching.
I was
the
like, this
rest
is
of
just we've lost some connection to reality.
I was like,
a
there's
little
no
bit,
way.
some of that. So again, not to go on a huge tangent, but this connects to
no,
Star Wars
what I
because
was
of the
saying was
business of
my-
these shows coming out.
Yeah,
Sorry,
and where I was going, I guess, with that, we kind of got on a little tangent, was that I understand how maybe the average Star Wars fan who was like that for me with Marvel
yeah.
could be feeling that way with some Star Wars things.
Yeah, and you
I'm
feel
a
behind.
hardcore Star Wars
feel
fan,
like if
so
you don't
I
know
don't
where
feel
to
that way
come
because
in.
I'm going to watch every single thing.
Yeah.
But for someone who's maybe an average Star Wars fan who really likes it, but there's a lot of projects going on,
You feel overwhelmed, or
and
you don't know
feel
where to
overwhelmed. You
join
don't know
in.
where to start. It's too late. I've already missed this much. I'll wait for the next movie. It's like I can see how what happened for me with Marvel could be happening with others for Star Wars.
Yeah. No, definitely. There's so I am so when we're talking about the future of Star Wars, I am worried about the future of Star Wars television. Of Star Wars television.
Star Wars. Listen, Star Wars isn't going anywhere, but
No, it's not going anywhere.
television.
There's 2 things. I'm worried about the future of Star Wars television as far as is it here for the long term? I really don't know, live action wise. I hope so,
I hope, yeah.
but my growing feeling is that we are going to be getting a lot less of it.
A lot less.
And there might even be a long break in between.
And it may be, honestly, long break and waiting for not necessarily another Mando in a sense of like multiple seasons, but a Mando idea that they feel is this is new characters, fresh story. We're confident in this story, and being like, okay, this is a time period maybe we can go toward, and being like, let's start this show with this character. This will be our main character. This will be our merchandise. Grogu, like all of that stuff plays a factor on how successful a show is.
I'm also, and then I do think one reality also is Star Wars as a whole does have a little bit of a struggle right now that it has to figure out. And I'm not saying it's on the production or on the leadership or on anything like that. As a whole, I do miss, and there's a number, I think fans are responsible for this, is partially responsible for it for sure. Star Wars fandom is definitely divided right now.
Oh yeah,
and it's not that it hasn't been divided in the past, because there's been stuff always going back to the prequels and all that.
Yeah.
But there is, I will say, I think what's unfortunate as a massive Star Wars fan, I think it's undeniable that the Star Wars shine, it's not as shiny a product right now as it's been. And not meaning the product that's being made, I'm saying it's not seen that way in the culture. It is not. I think there's a sense of it not being, obviously, just numbers. It hasn't been as received or as watched as much. I think there's a number of things that play a factor into that. I think with streaming in general, there are so many shows, so many things that it is very hard from a television standpoint to capture an audience and to become the cultural water cooler show that you could even do 5 years ago. I think it's very hard. Like, meaning, I don't know the numbers. I don't think House of the Dragon is anywhere close to the viewership of what Game of Thrones was.
No, or even the first season. I don't think the second.
I don't
season.
think it, because there's so many different options out there. You're not going to get a show like Lost that's like every single person that was around my age or a little bit older was watching Lost, and then you went to work or you went to school and everyone was talking about it.
There's so much to watch. There's so much content. It's
so
almost
it used
too
to be
competitive.
like these are the 5 shows that are going on right now from a big primetime standpoint, and it'd be like you're either watching the big show that's on Fox right now, like you're watching 24, you're watching Lost, you're watching Heroes, which is on like NBC, you're watching like. You had a number of these big shows that are all going on. Prison Break, like a number of those. And again, these are all shows from like 15 years ago. But you would have these handful of shows that everyone's watching. Nowadays, I'll be on Twitter or something like that, and someone's like, yo, this is the best show I've ever seen. It's on this. It's on Apple. And I look at it, I'm like, that looks
Never
awesome.
heard of it.
I've never even heard of that before.
And nor am I going to turn it on.
And people are like, it's great. And I go and you see like the Emmys, and it wins a bunch of awards. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's on my list of like 30 shows now to watch.
Yeah, it's on my list
because,
of all these shows.
There's
like,
so
I'll
many
never
shows
get to it.
that it's so hard to keep up with everything. So I do think in general, with streaming, it's hard to judge because the viewership model, all this stuff it's really kind of convoluted and complex. So it's hard to tell exactly even how popular a show is. Undeniably, and this is one of the reasons why I think they decided to make The Mandalorian and Grogu their first movie, and I think it is a smart decision. As much as I'm excited for the Rey movie, The Mandalorian and Grogu are their number one merch sellers right now. You can't go into any Target or any Walmart and not see a million things that has Grogu on it. And that alone, and Mandalorian, as far as the TV shows, even though Season 3 to me felt like a step down from Season 1 and 2, The Mandalorian is Mandalorian Seasons 1 and 2.
I mean, Mando and Grogu are the face of Star Wars right now.
They're the face of Star Wars right now. You see way more, you don't see a Luke Skywalker backpack as much as you see a Grogu backpack.
No.
Or a Mando helmet. Like, there's stuff about it that's, there's stuff about it that they're going to be able to capitalize on. Also, I think
and it's safe. They already have a following.
It's safe. They have a following. It's a recognizable
people want to know the
character.
Story.
It's feels like an entryway for a lot of people because you can go, like, there'll be a lot of people that are like, oh, I'm going to go see the Baby Yoda movie, and that's like legitimately a thing. Like, there's a lot of people who don't even know his name is Grogu, and it doesn't matter.
They'll go see it.
They don't care at all. I mean, even in interviews, I saw Dave Filoni in interviews at was somewhere. Was it for? I don't remember if it was for D23. Yeah, maybe it was for D23. He was on stage and he kept calling him Baby Yoda. Like even he was doing it. He's like, yeah, I mean, he's like, when you've got Baby Yoda, you've got a Baby Yoda, you've gotta. And so like, even he embraced like the fact that like culturally people know people know him as Baby Yoda, and why fight that? Because that's gonna sell us $1 billion.
Yeah.
And so when you look at to put the bow on the TV, I'm worried about it. I do think that in general, I hope that Star Wars can kind of right the ship as far as re-energizing the fan base. And again, that doesn't mean that on Star Wars like that all this negative stuff is warranted, because I don't think it is. I think that even with the unwarranted fan base and the loud kind of people that are just like will cry about everything and protest stuff and whatever, I do think a reality is Star Wars has an uphill battle to climb, as do a lot of these other shows right now. Rings of Power has an uphill battle to climb.
Season 2 looks incredible.
Looks amazing. I'm so excited for it. Premieres tonight. But they have an uphill battle when people turn negative against something. They then have to fight to turn them around while also doing it without losing a ton of money. So it's hard. Like people will be like, "Well, just make this type of show." And I'm like, "Okay, dude on YouTube who's just shouting saying you should make this type of show. If they make this type of show, two things are going to happen. You're then going to criticize saying, "Yo, well, this is the show I wanted, but you didn't make it the way I wanted." And you're getting super negative about it, and then be like, "Oh, they ruined this character of mine that I love forever." Or the rest of the fan base is like, "Yeah, that's not the show we want. We've already seen that. We've already seen a ton of Luke Skywalker. We've already seen a ton of Anakin. We've already." So
we want to get to something new, something fresh.
And then we do something new, and
then High Republic.
When we do something new, so that's why when tying it back to Acolyte, we've said before, we're not even defending the show as being like a perfect show or anything. I know I had my problems with it, even though I also had a lot of it that I really loved. I would advise, and none of you need my advice or anything, but I would just say any fans out there that always want to be quick to say, "I don't like this, you shouldn't like that," like what you like, dislike what you dislike. There's stuff I like, there's stuff I dislike. Just don't be the people that are telling other people you're wrong because you like this. Yeah. Or no, you don't. You like that? You're stupid. You're an idiot. Why do you like that? Let someone like it. All right? And then also, if you don't like it, don't watch it. And you can even say, "I don't like it." Don't make it your calling card and your online personality that you're rooting for Star Wars shows to fail, and then say, "I'm the biggest Star Wars fan you know." Well, then how come you're the only thing I ever see from you is that you're rooting for Star Wars shows to fail? Because that if that makes you a fan, I don't know what that does. So yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of thoughts there on Star Wars TV.
Yeah, there's a lot
of thoughts. We are rooting for the best. I hope that
I hope
Star Wars live
action
is
great.
Yeah, I hope Star Wars live action continues. And if it doesn't, and we go back into a phase, and I'll be honest too, if it kind of fades out of the Disney Plus and gets into, if a result of that is that we get more frequent movies, I'm okay with that for a little while. Like if it's like, oh, we don't get a bunch of shows, but every other year for the next 6 years, we're going to get 3 Star Wars movies over the next 6 years. Cool. Sign me up. Like we've had a bunch of movies and then a bunch of shows with no movies, and now maybe it'll swing back a little bit. And so there might be a little ebb and flow of that. It'd also be great if we continue to get movies with getting a lot of animated shows. I would love that balance as well. Yeah. If we get some new animated shows and then the movies are picking up also, that might be the best of both worlds right there.
Give me more Filoni animation. I mean, I'll take that all day. Some Clone Wars art style.
Oh, come on.
We'll wrap it up with this. J-Man in the chat says, unrelated, I have a longer commute to work now, and I'm about to finish the Thrawn trilogy.
Ooh, yeah.
What are some other good audiobooks to listen to? I know there are more Thrawn books. Are they worth listening? You might have more. I think you've probably read more.
J-Man, which Thrawn trilogy are you referring to? Is it the original Zahn ones, like the Heir of the Empire trilogy, or the new Thrawn? The new Thrawn, because there's a couple Thrawn trilogy. There's a couple new Thrawn trilogies. Even. Yeah, because you have the Thrawn, you have the first of his Disney Thrawn books are called Thrawn. Thrawn, is it Allegiance? Let me think of the one that's with Anakin in it. Because then he has the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy.
Yeah.
Let me see the Thrawn trilogy because we got
He
the
said,
original
"Yeah,
one.
Heir."
Oh, Heir of the Empire. Yeah. Oh, it's so good. Yeah. Then we have Thrawn.
And yeah, the new Thrawn books
Is it Alliance?
have been
I
viewed
found it.
very highly. Even just some other ones too. Lost Stars. I don't know if you got around to that one or not.
Lost Stars is fantastic.
Lost Stars is one of my favorite books, just in general, not alone Star Wars. Just favorite books in general. It's so good. Lost Stars is incredible. Sarah would probably like that too, Joe.
To finish that thought there, Joe. So obviously, I love the original Thrawn trilogy. It's great. The Heir of the Empire trilogy. And what's funny is I didn't actually read it fully growing up. I knew of Heir of the Empire, but I didn't know the rest of them until now. It would have been probably like 6 or 7 years ago. Probably, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Awesome trilogy. And then the new Thrawn trilogy, just so I get the titles right. We have Thrawn, of the Disney Thrawn stuff. Thrawn Alliances.
Thrawn Alliances.
Which is interesting because there's some time jump stuff. It's a young Thrawn going on essentially getting connected with Anakin.
Yep,
and then fast forwarding to him being, because this is before Thrawn is a part of the Empire. It's just the Chiss Ascendancy, and he's kind of stranded, and he and Anakin are on Batuu, and they go on this adventure, and it ties into even Galaxy's Edge and all this stuff a little bit. They then connect.
He said Lost Stars is amazing.
Lost Stars is so good. And then it connects to in the future when Thrawn is in the Empire, and he meets this character named Darth Vader, and he's trying to piece together there's something familiar about this guy.
Yeah.
It's because he met Anakin when he was young. So that's interesting. And then Thrawn Treason is the third of that one that I couldn't remember. And then you have the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy as well. Yeah, I think Lost Stars is also such a pleasant read. Like when you brought up Lost Stars, it feels to me like the perfect fall book to read right now. Like I actually might just go over it. Like for some reason, there's something cozy about Lost Stars that
it's just a good.
Like I really am like I want to go get like a cup of coffee and read Lost Stars right now.
I know
because even though I've already read it, it's so good.
I might reread it. It's so good.
Obviously, if you haven't read Plagueis is a great one.
Any of the High Republic stuff,
there's
a lot of material there.
Lords of the Sith is a really
Lords
good
of the Sith.
Yeah. And then what's the new? What was the other one of the Sith? What's the I'm talking about the one with Luke on Exegol. What's that one called? You mean Uncle just recently read. That's something of the Sith also. Not Lords of the Sith, right? That's Lords of the Sith is Vader and Palpatine out in the woods.
What is it?
Fighting against.
We read it. What's it called?
Fighting against Chin Syndulla.
What's it called?
Cham Syndulla.
Shadows of the Sith.
Shadows of the Sith. Yeah.
Is that it? Shadows of the Sith.
Shadows of the Sith is great.
That is
or Shadow.
Shadows
of the Empire is a book from like the early 2000s.
Is it Shadow of the Sith?
Shadow of the Sith. Yeah,
okay.
That's it. When you got Ochia Bestoon.
Yeah.
That's a really good one if you like any of the kind of the threads that were set up but not fully explored in Rise of Skywalker. That's one that's I think really is cool. Get into some Palpatine cloning stuff, like get into
what Luke was doing.
Before he went
into hiding.
Luke and Lando.
Rey.
All that stuff is in there.
Yeah.
It's really
Anakin.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in there for sure.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. There's some book recommendations, Joe. Let us know what you end up going with.
Last this will be real quick. I know we're wrapping. I screenshot this though because a couple of little things here. The Sigourney Weaver. Which, if you know Sigourney Weaver, she's obviously
she got cast for the Mando and Grogu movie.
Is in the Mando and Grogu movie. This was months ago that people had speculated. I think that it was kind of out there that she had been cast, but she officially did some interview, and her quote was she confirms that she is in the Mandalorian Grogu and said, "I got to meet Grogu for the first time the other day," and then she was talking about her schedule of doing this other film and how she's filming for Mando and Grogu here.
Master and
Yeah.
Apprentice too.
Master
Yeah.
and Apprentice is a great one.
Yeah.
I love Master and
He
Apprentice.
said, "What about that?"
That's a really good
that's
one.
good too.
Because that gets into Master and Apprentice. When you get into anything with Qui-Gon and him, with Obi-Wan. So there's there's the Obi-Wan. Is that Obi-Wan and Anakin?
There's Brotherhood.
There's Brotherhood. But
Is that what you're thinking of?
which one is Master and Apprentice? Is Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, or is it Obi-Wan and Anakin?
No, Master and Apprentice, I think, is Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon.
Yeah, and then Brotherhood is Obi-Wan and Anakin.
Obi-Wan and Anakin.
Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, I love because you get into, I think it's Master and Apprentice, is when they talk about Qui-Gon and Dooku, and you get some flash of Qui-Gon and Dooku, and Qui-Gon's obsession with prophecy, because Dooku was obsessed with prophecies, and that's where. So it's funny that Dooku's influence on him, wanting to study these kind of big nature aspects of the Force and prophecy and destiny.
Can I just
is
say
why Qui-Gon got involved in that, and that's one of the reasons that Qui-Gon. So I love the way it connects it. That's why Qui-Gon is one of the only people who sticks his neck out for Anakin,
True.
is because he believes the prophecy. That Dooku was interested in this prophecy stuff, which led to Qui-Gon, his apprentice, being interested.
And
Anakin.
can I just say that Tales of the Jedi episode of Yaddle and Dooku
It's one of my favorite animated
is
things they've ever done.
unbelievable, and the connection of realizing that Dooku was still a Jedi at the Jedi Temple at the time when Qui-Gon died, and that's part of the last thing that was kind
It's
of like
the final
holding.
straw.
It was like part of the last thing that was really holding him to the light side, holding him there, and then when he realized he was gone, he was like, "All right, I got nothing to lose now. I'm going for the Sith," and he converted. Crazy.
One sad thing with the cancellation of the Acolyte, screenshot this as well. Will we ever find out the connection between the Stranger and Kylo? The music.
They kept connecting that, and they said it was for a reason.
She kept saying you're going. That's intentional. And we never got it.
We never did.
Never got it. Maybe in a novel, but in a novel also it won't be written by her. So I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe he's the first.
It's unfortunate. We
Maybe
speculate
it's
all
the
that.
start
But maybe
of
it's
the
not.
Knights of Ren or
I don't
something.
know. And then lastly, did you hear Keanu Reeves? Did you hear about that news?
Wants to be in Star Wars or something?
Keanu Reeves almost, according to this,
almost played
Master
Soul. Yeah, I saw that.
And that he couldn't due to scheduling conflicts.
He almost played Master Soul.
Yeah. Well, it said he's very interested. He has expressed he's interested in Star Wars, and Lucasfilm is very interested in casting Reeves in a different Star Wars project if possible. So that'd be kind of cool.
Cool. Well, there you have it. There's a lot of news
discussion.
going on. Let us know your guys' thoughts and where you see the kind of the future of Star Wars TV going, and what you're excited about most with these projects coming up. We're looking forward to Skeleton Crew. I really am rooting for it to be successful. I'm rooting for it to be good.
Fun.
It looks fun.
Which I do think some Star Wars shows that maybe lacked a little fun lately.
Yeah, that's
fun.
true. Add a little lighthearted.
A lot of the
fun.
dark
It's
Star Wars
honestly
stuff.
a good follow-up to Acolyte, I think.
Yeah.
Being a little more lighthearted, a little more fun, a little
And
more.
we already know we got Andor coming. We know we got
a little more
Ahsoka,
adventure-y.
which Ahsoka's kind of pulp, like kind of out there mystical, but sometimes leans into a little. At least season 1 was a little more of the darker side. There's some once Ezra gets there, and you got the talking turtles with bow ties and stuff.
Yeah,
that's when it gets wacky and fun. But Acolyte was a little on the obviously
the darker side.
It's a tragedy, so it's supposed to be. But Skeleton Crew, that looks like it's going to be a fun adventure, kind of solo
more
adventure vibes. Yeah,
like more out there. Yeah, in the stars.
I'm excited.
But yeah, looking
across
forward to
the stars.
Across the stars. But yeah, looking forward to it. Let us know your guys' thoughts. And thanks for tuning in. As always, if you made it this far, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and smash the notification bell. That got me today.
We'll
nice. Catch you guys in the next one. And as always, may the Force be with you.
Do you ever hear of the tragedy of the Acolyte that cancelled? I thought not. I should have said it was just not renewed for season 2.
It was something they tried
The
to
Acolyte was a dark show, so short because it was only greenlit for 8 episodes. Ironic. It was only given 8 episodes, yet was $180 million. I don't know why it was.
I don't know why it was so expensive, but
we liked it. Farewell,